Yeah, welcome to another edition of Here Come the Irish. Vic Lombardi joined by my pal Ryan Harris. Ryan, I know you're on the road, some hotel nationwide. I am broadcasting from my parents' house in my dad's office, where it's got wood paneling from the Brady Bunch era, and he's got about 30 Notre Dame hats in the corner here. So it's pretty
And
cool.
he told you not to touch anything, right? He was
I'm
like,
not-
don't touch anything.
Yeah, as a kid, I was never allowed in here, but this is the first time in a long time, so I feel very special today. Hey, Ryan, before we get into this week and what's in store for the Irish, you survived Vegas, which is, I tell you, not many people do. Was it as crazy as you made it out to be? Because it looked fun.
It was so much fun. There were Irish fans everywhere, and I came fresh from the Thursday night game on Westwood 1, did a CBS hit in the morning at 6, jumped on the flight, and then got to see so many great Notre Dame people. I saw Tom Mendoza, Reggie Brooks, many others, and then that first night hit a concert with Ludacris, and then the next day slept till about 11, got up, and Vic, the stadium was perfect. About a mile and a half walk, though. They got to figure that out. But the stadium was perfect, and that Shamrock logo was sweet. And, of course, the best of all was seeing the Irish beat the then number 16th ranked BYU.
Somebody asked me today, Ryan, why is Notre Dame playing the Shamrock Series? Why are they going from city to city? I said, because you want to share the love. You want other people in other parts of the country to go to these games, and you're going to sell out all of these games. There was no issue there, right? I mean, what was the crowd? I mean, was it mostly Notre Dame fans?
Yeah, mostly Notre Dame fans. And there were thousands of Notre Dame fans who didn't even get tickets, who just went for the game. But the other thing, too, Vic, people are missing this, especially with football. Las Vegas is continuing to grow as a city where there are going to be recruits. But the other thing, like you said, share the love. We are the only fan base that can legitimately travel nationwide. Take advantage of that. Showcase that. And how unique. You had Manti Te'o on the field. You had Tom Mendoza in attendance. You had Don Casey there. I mean, everybody from Notre Dame was there and enjoying it. And fortunately for me, Vic, the radio crew got put up in the Four Seasons there. So no casino, which is fine by me. Quiet little oasis. It was a wonderful time for everyone involved.
Me jealous, dude. That's the last thing you need to do is make me jealous. Hey, outside of the game, I got to get your thoughts on this. Proud, and I was so joyous watching Manti Te'o as part of the broadcast. And I don't know if you got a chance to watch the post game because you're calling your own game there, but he did the post game show, and he was so well versed, so informative. I think he could be a natural broadcaster, and I'm just so happy that Manti Te'o now can be himself again and can be a person that is not afraid to get out in public. It's just so well deserved.
Well, I get the chills thinking about it, Vic, because, I got to see Manti down there. Tim Brown and Jerome Bettis and I, the four of us, had an unbelievable photo. And it was the second time I've seen Manti in about 3 weeks. And I just told him, I said, I'm so glad you're coming back. And I went through that, too. When I was out of the NFL for a little bit, I didn't know what to do, Vic. And Reggie Brooks said, hey, Ryan, come back home. And when I came back to Notre Dame, it wasn't that I wasn't with the team in the NFL. People were like, Ryan, welcome back. We missed you. And there's so many things you forget when you leave campus. And one of them is the love that we all build and share with each other at Notre Dame, regardless if you're in sports or not. But that's who we are at Notre Dame. You become a family when you go there. And Manti Te'o has elite football knowledge. And like you said, now he can be himself around family. And it's just so great to see him. I just tell him I love him. Good to see you. I said, hey, we need you back more. So hopefully he can come back in many, many ways.
That's great. All right, regarding the game, great start. They ran the ball. Drew Pine passed the ball well. But to me, the story of that game is Michael Mayer, who continues. This guy's a beast. I mean, you cannot find a better tight end in the country, in my estimation. He can do everything, block, catch, talk, everything. Is he not the best tight end in the country?
He might be the best tight end in Notre Dame history, in addition to being the best tight end in the country, and passed Tyler Eifert for most receptions by a tight end. And one of my friends who came to the game doesn't really watch NFL, Notre Dame football or pay attention to football. He goes, that tight end for Notre Dame is really something special. I mean, he catches everything you throw his way. He's always in the right spot. And teams know that they're trying to get him the ball and that he still finds a way to get open. But I also thought it was a phenomenal job by the coaching staff. Vic, you can always tell how good a coaching staff is with how a team plays out of the bye. And Notre Dame was dominant in all phases. Special teams, offense, defense. I thought it was Tommy Rees's best game calling a game for Notre Dame. I mean, they were relentless. 40 called runs plus Drew Pine. It was fantastic. Just short of the incompletion to touchdown ratio that quarterbacks always strive for. Drew Pine found another level. And then it was great to see Logan Diggs bring his speed and power, kind of a unique thing. And Vic, when you have a back like Audric Estime, Logan Diggs, and Chris Tyree, you can run the same play. And for a defense, it's very different. I got my shoulders square, my feet in the ground for Audric Estime. I got to guess to where Chris Tyree's going to try and cut him off. Logan Diggs, I don't know what's happening. He ran me over. So, I mean, there's so many things that just the same play with a different running back drastically changes how a defense plays you.
Well, 496 yards of offense, second most productive game of the season for the Irish. Let's get you a little lowdown, a little review of how the Irish took out BYU.
Fake it to him. Here's Hall. Drops the pass, and this is intercepted. Tariq Bracy on the first play of the game is going to set up the Irish perfectly. Here comes Groupie, 3 for 4 on the season. And Groupie is good. Now Pine, protection is great, and he fires towards Mayer. Look at this hands catch by Mayer for the first down. Now Pine, protected well and fires, has Mayer, and Mayer on top for the touchdown. He has the record all by himself. Now Hall, deep in his own territory. Hall is going to go down. It's a safety. Jack Kaiser is there. The pocket is collapsing on Hall, and they get him. Here's Pine, fires, he's looking for Thomas, and Thomas makes the play. Spins the hips around, gets physical, 215 pounds, and he took it away from Robinson. Now 3 tight ends check into the game for Notre Dame. Here's Pine trying to escape the pass rush, and he does, able to get it away. It's Estime. Now Estime goes airborne with the first down. How about this play? Little Patrick Mahomes magic for Pine. Love to get Mayer in motion, trying to free him up. Now Pine looking towards Mayer. Lobs one up into the air, and Michael Mayer brings in the touchdown. Stop it out, big fella. Round game, right up the middle, still on his feet is Audric Estime. Now Estime into the secondary. One man to meet and shoved out inside the 10. That was Judy Lally who saved the touchdown.
Making an 8-point game.
And that was Micah Harper there on the spot. Groupie in and right down the middle for Groupie. So that's a big field goal though.
Right there, the critical moment for the Irish.
Amazing. Gibb, here's Diggs. Diggs has a lane. Diggs makes a man miss by going vertical. He's still on his feet, out across midfield, breaking tackles.
And Notre Dame is on a roll. A big win for the Irish out here in Vegas.
Whew! It was even fun watching it again. Congrats to the Irish and everything they did to win that game. And congrats to all the Irish fans that made it out. But next, let's talk to Aiden Thomas about what the Stanford Cardinals will bring defensively to the Irish this weekend. How you doing, Aiden?
Doing pretty well. 3 straight wins, so starting to get things rolling. It was a nice win last weekend for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's rock and roll, and let's start with just the 30,000-foot view of this. People will say much maligned Stanford defense, but we know better than that. What do we need to know about this Stanford defense as a whole?
Yeah, well, the Stanford defense is actually coming off of their best performance of the year. It was the first time they didn't give up 40-plus points to a Power 5 team. They kind of stayed with Oregon State. Oregon State needed a really late comeback to win. So Stanford definitely showed some improvement. One of the major changes from this year is that they've switched from a 3-4 to a 4-3 defense. So really kind of try to stack their defensive line a little bit more, because last year their run defense was a huge issue for them. And so I think there's been a lot of adjustment period, but so that was a nice sign for Stanford that they're starting to adjust to this new defensive scheme, and they might be able to, so it might be a bit of an issue of if that momentum carries over from that one game, if they really start to play this defensive scheme well, they could be a lot better than people are expecting.
Well, let's talk about some of the players who make up that Stanford defense. Who are a couple of guys that we got to look out for?
Yeah, so definitely I think their best player is their nickelback, Patrick Fields. He's out there. He'll make plays in the pass game for sure, but he's also pretty disruptive against the run. He's got 3 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. So when he's on the field, he's a pretty disruptive player to watch. On the defensive line, they've got David Bailey, who's a true freshman. And he's got 3.5 tackles for loss and a sack, and he plays off the edge usually. And then Tobin Phillips, he entered the year with only 1 career start, which is part of a really inexperienced defensive line, but he's played really well so far. 3 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. So he's been kind of like the main guy up front for Stanford. So he's making plays. Bailey's coming off the edge, and then you've got Ricky Meisen, the linebacker, and he has a couple sacks, 4 tackles for loss. So they definitely have some playmakers, and it's just a matter of how they fit in that scheme and whether they can kind of take away everything from an opposing offense.
Well, all right, Aiden, and now your favorite part of the show. And clearly, Tommy Rees listened to you last week. You said run the ball. What's your formula for an offensive dominant performance for the Irish this week against the Cardinal?
Yeah, so I think almost like a little bit of the challenge this week is kind of deciding, like, I think Notre Dame has a lot of different ways they can attack Stanford. Just Stanford's really has, they're maligned for a reason. They have 41 to USC. They gave up 40 to Washington, 45 to Oregon. So they've given up over 200 rush yards a game. So I think that is, again, where it's going to start for Notre Dame is get Estime going, get Diggs going, get Tyree going. They're going to have success on the ground to some extent. Stanford just really hasn't been able to stop that. Even last year when Notre Dame played Stanford, you really saw Stanford key in on Kyron Williams and try to stop them, and they still gave up 4 rushing touchdowns, and it opened up things for Michael Mayer, and last year it was Kevin Austin. So I think you'll see Notre Dame start with the run game, really make Stanford commit to stopping that, and then let Pine open it up and start taking some shots. Last weekend, Stanford gave up 2 touchdowns of over 40 yards in the last 6 minutes of the game to lose that game to Oregon State. So I think they're really susceptible to the big play. So once you start running Estime at them and running Diggs at them and Tyree, then you're going to have Styles. Now you got Jaden Thomas, you got Mayer. So you got a lot of guys that you can take shots with once you've opened that up with the run game.
I'm glad you brought up Jaden Thomas, his first touchdown of the year. And that's somebody who at the spring game, coaches were like, hey, Jaden Thomas is at a really great camp. Finally, he's come out of his shell. And hats off to Drew Pine for making him shine as well, giving him that deep touchdown, man-to-man coverage shot. I mean, that's guts, that's courage, that's teammates believing in one another. So I'm with you. He is Aiden Thomas of The Observer. If you make it to campus, make sure to read The Observer, support the paper. Go Irish. Thanks for joining us, Aiden.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you.
Next, let's hear what Coach Marcus Freeman has to say about the Stanford Cardinal game this week.
Going into this week, moving forward, it's a rivalry game, and we'll have a motivated Stanford team that is really actually, if you watch the film, and I haven't watched as much as I need to yet, and I will. We return, I think, about 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, and so, but I know, just watching the Oregon State game, they should have won that game, and it's going to be a talented football team that is going to come in here and present a huge challenge for our football team. So, as I told the guys, enjoy the win for a day, and we have to move forward. Today we'll practice. We didn't practice yesterday because of the late arrival, but today we'll meet, put the BYU game to rest, and we got to get ready for Stanford.
All right, let's chat about the Stanford offense, shall we? Let's bring in from The Observer, Mannion McGinley, who joins us every week. Mannion, how are you?
Doing well, Vic. How are you?
I'm great. I'm in my dad's home office. I went to my dad's place this week just to feel a little more rustic. So that's where I'm sitting. Hey, speaking of rustic, what happened to Stanford football? What happened to the great offenses of yesteryear, the Christian McCaffreys, the Toby Gerhardts, all those great quarterbacks that came through there? Now they're not the same anymore. What happened there?
I don't know. I mean, McKee was supposed to be stellar this year, and he hasn't really been. He's the head of this offense. I mean, that much is true, and he's spreading the wealth with the receptions. But he's had three interceptions, and on a flea flicker there was one as well. So he's just not looking as strong as he's supposed to. And it really comes down to he can do well when the pocket holds, but if he's under pressure, he's not been able to handle it.
So is it the typical pro-style David Shaw offense? What kind of offense do they run in Stanford?
They've been a little bit all over the place. They've not been totally sure on the play calling this year. It's actually been a major question for them. But they've been using a lot of their running backs and receivers in both roles, which has been really interesting. And he's just had the ball in a lot of different places.
Do you have more faith in the Irish offense against these different the Irish defense, I should say, given the fact that they've played games and they've seen different looks, different styles? They're starting to get a rhythm about them to contend against anything thrown their way.
Yeah, they're definitely starting to get a rhythm. And the fact that we've started to see turnovers is huge, especially against this turnover-heavy offense. They've had 12 on the year. And so I think the Irish are really in a good spot to take advantage of some of that and find a way to be taking some of those to the house as well.
Wow, that's great. 12 turnovers for Stanford. This could be a feast. Take advantage of that. Mannion, what's the feeling on campus? I'm sure it feels a little different than it did the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, the feeling's turning around, especially, this is a long-standing game, long-standing rivalry. We're just starting to see people have a little bit more faith in the offense, and it's going to be interesting to play an old rival. The Observer actually is doing a history of the matchup, and we were looking through old coverage, and I happened to recognize a byline, Vic. Do you remember your story on the Four Horsemen?
You got to be kidding me! I don't remember writing. I can't remember. I can't remember a single day at the Observer. I wrote a story on the Four Horsemen.
Yep.
Can you send it to me? I mean, is it like Pulitzer-winning type of journalism, or was it pretty Dr. Seuss-like?
It's great. It might actually be running this weekend.
You got to send that to me. That's awesome. I honestly don't remember. For me, Mannion, college remains fast a blur. It was a blur. So while you're there, soak it up the best you can. Remember the good times. Don't worry about the bad, because you'll forget all of it in about 30 years anyway. All right, Mannion? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much for your I can't wait to read that. Right now, let's hear from David Shaw, head coach of the Stanford Cardinals.
They're on the defensive side. They're big and they're physical. Got a couple of marquee players in their front seven, long and athletic, and in secondary. They put pressure on a couple of different ways. The four-man rush is tough. A lot of press man-to-man coverage. They'll mix up the coverages. They'll mix up the pressures. Inside linebackers are big and physical when they pressure you. On the offensive side, I know they sputtered a little bit early on, but it's a quarterback had to come out. But they found their efficiency. They're getting the ball to their athletes. That they're running the ball well. Keeping you off balance with their play calling. So, they found their stride, and they're on a nice little run.
Well, we might have the best special guest ever. He's an intergalactic guest, some might say, and one who I've actually had the honor to meet in person at the Houston Super Bowl. Please welcome Notre Dame dad and pilot, astronaut. You put a name to it, he can do it. Colonel in the United States Space Force, Mike Hopkins. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Ryan, thanks. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to be with you. You have so much that we could talk about in terms of your journey through space and what you've accomplished, what you're doing now. But let's just start in 1992. After you got your master's degree, you had a lengthy career and worked in advanced space systems technology and became special assistant to the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General James Cartwright. What the heck does that mean? Can you even tell us what you were doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, So that first part of it was back when I was just a second lieutenant and starting out in the Air Force. So working on space technologies for the satellites that we were building at that time. And now when you talk about when I was working for General Cartwright on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that was, that was about 20 years later when I had that job. So there was a lot that happened in between there to include getting into flight test and learning how to test airplanes and fly and do that type of work, which was absolutely amazing to get to do. And then there was a couple other jobs in between to include an assignment here at the Pentagon. And that's where I ended up working for General Cartwright on his staff.
Well, you're familiar with DC, you're familiar with space. Let's talk about that. And by the way, being a flight tester and things like that, I don't know if I'd be a helmet tester in football. You played football too at Illinois, so I'm sure you wouldn't have been either. But let's talk about your 2013 flight to the International Space Station. One, you flew out of Russia. Not sure that would happen today. But I also heard this may have been one of your scariest moments in space. What happened?
Yeah, so, well, you said it wouldn't happen today. Actually, we just launched a U.S. astronaut. In fact, he's an Army major on a Russian Soyuz just last month. So the relationships is pretty amazing. The relationship on the space side of the house between Russia and the United States is still very good. We have a strong partnership on board the International Space Station. Now, going back to that very scary moment. So it actually had to do with after I had launched and I got on board the space station and I was out doing a spacewalk and I was on this robotic arm that's 60 feet long and it's swinging me down below the station and I'm holding on to this big refrigerator, 800-pound refrigerator-sized pump module. And the arm comes to a stop and it's oscillating up and down and that pump module is wanting to still go in the same direction. I felt like I'd come off the arm and I was floating away in space. And that was one of those moments of just sheer terror that lasted for probably 3 or 4 seconds. But fortunately, everything settled down. I was still attached to the robotic arm, and now I'm sitting here with you today.
What is it like to sweat in a spacesuit?
Well, it smells.
Does it like float up? Like instead of sweating down, does it just like go up, or what happened?
Yeah, so it's going to collect on you. Like if you're really sweating hard, like when you're playing ball, one of the things for us is if we're sweating that hard, that means we're working too hard, and that means we're using our consumables. So when we go out on a spacewalk, we're carrying our oxygen, our power, our cooling, and our ability to get rid of the CO2 that we generate with us when we go outside. So we only have a certain amount of time that we're able to work outside. And so if you're sweating, you're probably working too hard and you're shrinking how long you're going to be able to stay out there. But the bottom line is once you crawl into that suit, you've got about 32 ounces of water. That's about all you have from hydrating standpoint, no food. You are wearing a diaper as well. And so you're sweating in your long underwear that you're wearing underneath the suit, and you're filling up a diaper at the same time as well. So by the time the mission is over, the spacewalk is over, you're ready to get out of the suit. That's for sure.
Are there any washing machines up there in space? I mean, how do you clean those suits?
Yeah, there's no washing machines. You basically just hang them out to dry. So imagine, it's interesting you asked that. So when we're on board the station, we actually work out a couple hours a day, and that's to help us prevent bone loss and muscle atrophy and things of that nature. But our workout clothes, without a washer and dryer, you basically have what we call a usage rate. And so our workout clothes, we get a week that we have to wear these clothes before we throw them out. And so you can imagine at the end of day 6 and day 7, after you've been sweating in them a couple hours a day, they are definitely ready to be thrown out.
When you throw them out, do you send them towards Pluto or Neptune, or do you just, what do you do?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Well, we don't have anything like that. So when we throw things out, we just collect all of our trash and it builds up. And eventually we have a supply vehicle that comes up that we pull all the supplies off and we stuff all the trash in. And then that supply vehicle, believe it or not, it burns up in the atmosphere. And so if you're walking outside someday and there's a bunch of dust falling down on you, that might just be our trash from the International Space Station.
Well, that's one of your many space stories. And there's another one I want to get to that's going to bring us a lot closer to campus. on one of your final missions, I believe it was, to space. There's a reactor at your son's campus residence, on campus there at his dorm, and it allowed you somehow to see him before you launched into space. What's that story?
Yeah, what an amazing story. I got to tell you, the University of Notre Dame just did an incredible job. When we launch and we bring people back from space, we always have an astronaut with the families. And the reason for that is because if something goes wrong, they're that kind of conduit to try and help inform the families of what's happened, to get the families in a safe area. And so 10 days before my last mission, before I launched, my son was a close contact and he had to go into quarantine. And the funny part was he called up my wife and he said, "Mom, my roommate, he came down, tested positive. I'm a close contact. I got to go into quarantine and I'm going to miss the Clemson game." And that was his biggest concern. And
Dad's going to space, so I won't get to see him.
Right.
Yeah, you've done your job, right?
And my wife was like, "Lucas, you realize that you might miss your dad's launch." But this is where Notre Dame just did an amazing job, because I mentioned the fact that we always have an astronaut there, and it's in case something bad happens. And we had a chance to talk to Father Brogren, who was Lucas's rector in his dorm. And we explained the situation and all that. And he was absolutely amazing. Notre Dame was amazing. Father Brogren was like, "Mike, Julie, do not worry about it. No matter what happens, if Lucas is here, even if he tests positive, I will be in that room with him when you launch into space, so that if something, does go wrong, he's not going to be alone." And so I got to tell you, when you're faced in that kind of a situation, and the backup for having an astronaut there as a priest in case something goes wrong, that makes you feel pretty good about what's going, what potentially could happen. And so Notre Dame was just so supportive through that whole effort. And in the end, Lucas got to go to the launch and be there. But it wouldn't have happened without the efforts that Father Brogren and the rest of Notre Dame did to make sure he was able to support.
Well, how amazing that Father Brogren got to bring you a little bit of sense of security as you're getting ready to literally rocket into space. But faith plays a large part in your life, Colonel Hopkins. And I've been told you even brought the Eucharist up to the space station once. Talk us through that.
Yeah, actually, I was very fortunate. I was able to bring it up both times. I was selected as an astronaut in 2009, and my wife was Catholic and my sons were raised Catholic, but I wasn't Catholic. I had been raised Methodist. But at that time, right before I launched on my first mission, I felt like something was missing, and it was my relationship with God and Jesus, and so I was actually able to convert to Catholicism, and so you would think, okay, he's getting to go into space, he's got an amazing wife, 2 amazing kids, he's now Catholic. What else could there be? And I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to be able to take the Eucharist up with me, so I did talk to our priests, and they helped coordinate with the archdiocese that allowed me to be able to take the Eucharist up with me, the body of Christ with me, and receive communion, give myself communion, which isn't normal. And so I got to tell you, I was able to do that for both missions. And one of the things that we talk about, I get asked a lot about, is how do you deal with the fear, like the moments that I described earlier out on the spacewalk. And the way you deal with it is preparation, as and certainly a lot of people can appreciate, knowing your family is behind you, and then knowing that Jesus was with me, because right before I'd gone out on that spacewalk, I received communion. When I launched and when I landed, I had in the pics, I had the pics in my pocket with Jesus inside there. And so that certainly brings you a level of comfort, knowing that you don't have to worry about whatever happens. You've got Jesus with you.
And last question, or one of the last questions for me, Colonel, in addition to overcoming the fear, and that's amazing that you're able to bring the Eucharist up and feel that sense of security, you've had to, as an astronaut, overcome differences with other people, whether it was your specialties and backgrounds, nationalities, languages. From your time in space and literally space travel, what doesn't matter when it comes to our differences as human beings?
Yeah. It is pretty amazing when you have the chance to spend the time that you do up in space with your very close crewmates, right? And our crewmates came from all over the world. We had U.S. astronauts, we had Japanese astronauts with us. We had European astronauts, and we had Russian astronauts, cosmonauts with us as well. And what you realize that when you really get to work with each other and deal with each other on a one-on-one, on a human basis, some of the other things just aren't as important, right? When you're relying on each other for your safety, when you're relying on each other to come home to your families in a safe way as well, you really find that you can get along quite well with folks. And then the other thing that I would say is you'll oftentimes hear people talk about the overview effect of when you look down at the Earth from 250 miles up. You see this very thin atmosphere that's keeping us all alive, and you see this amazing world, but you see a world that doesn't have the borders, and so you can just feel this, how we're all connected. And you certainly get that sense while you're up in space, and that's something that you definitely bring back with you.
Well, I tell my kids, Colonel Hopkins, that they're going to be the first ones in our family to maybe make it to space. How far are we from regular people like myself and others from taking a little space jaunt that's less than $250,000?
Well, from a cost perspective, we're probably still a little ways away from it being more affordable, but we are in a very, very exciting time for human spaceflight. I mean, so, you've got the agencies, the major agencies like NASA, like Roscosmos, ESA, CSA, JAXA, that are putting astronauts into space. But with the commercialization of human spaceflight that you've seen, the SpaceXs and the Boeing and the Blue Origins and the Virgin Galactics, all of a sudden you are opening that door up to more and more people. And it's kind of interesting because oftentimes we'll get asked, so for some of these suborbital flights that last only a few minutes, people will say, well, are these astronauts? Are they non-astronauts? And I think it's a wonderful problem to have, that we're trying to figure out what to call people that have had a chance to sit on top of a rocket, launch above 60 miles, 100 kilometers, and then safely return to Earth. That is pretty exciting, that this is where we are today. And in the next 10 years, you're only going to see more and more and more people getting into space. It's going to be incredible.
So I noticed you did not call them astronauts. So I'll have to go a little higher then, Colonel. I got you. Don't worry about it. My brother-in-law is in the Air Force. He'll teach me what rocket to jump on.
I'm happy to call them astronauts. I think that's fine. And it is funny because, William Shatner, right, is one of those that's gone into space, and people say, well, what do you call him? I said, well, he's Captain Kirk. That's what I call him. I don't know.
Ultimate peacemaker, Colonel Hopkins. Right. And lastly, talking about where we are and where we are going to be, you're probably going to you're coming to campus. Plans are to catch one of the final games on campus with your son on campus. Yeah. What are you looking forward to when you come back home to Notre Dame?
Yeah, it is just a special environment around there all the time. But I would say, as you're well aware, football weekends are like nothing else. And so, when your son, when your child is a senior and they're starting to, on their last hurrah, if you will. And so this opportunity to be able to spend with him and spend with his friends and his families, it's really just, I don't know, there's something magical about it, right? There's something magical about it's an energy that's in the air that you can just feel. You can almost taste it. I mean, there's just so much excitement and anticipation and camaraderie, and everybody's so friendly, and it's just an environment that I've never seen anywhere else in the world, meaning, the football weekends and all that. And Notre Dame is certainly one of those places where it's extra special. So I'm very happy that we're going to be able to spend this time with him. I'm happy that we're going to be able to get to see the game and just be a part of that energy.
Well, this has been incredible to get to discuss your incredible achievements and the places you've gone, Colonel. Congratulations on your successful career, and thank you for continuing to defend us and serve us with the United States Space Force. And a big congrats to your son becoming a senior and getting one of his final games at Notre Dame with his astronaut father. Thank you so much for joining us, and go Irish.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Ryan. Go Irish.
That's Colonel Mike Hopkins for you of the United States Space Force Command. Next, your favorite part of the show, Vic's Picks, where you get to beat Vic if you can.
It is
Time for another episode of Vic's Picks. We pick the upcoming game. We ask the fans out there, our viewers, can they pick them better than I can? Last week, you could not. Not a single winner last week. So nobody wins the Here Come the Irish hoodie. We hope that changes this week. Let's welcome into the show, representing the Athletic Directors Circle, Mike Mountford, class of 77 from New Buffalo, Michigan. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fine for an old guy.
Oh, come on. You're not that old. 77. So give us the era of 77. Who was your quarterback that year?
Well, freshman year it was Tom Clements, and senior year it was Joe Montana. Some good ones.
Oh, my goodness. You're not old if you're Joe Montana's class. Joe Montana is still young and spry and throws a perfect spiral, for crying out loud. So is it true, the legend of Montana, Mike, when he got there, he was like seventh among the freshmen on the depth chart? He was a nobody, and he worked his way all the way up the ladder?
I don't know about seventh, but fourth, yes.
But nobody knew who he was, right? And the next thing you know, he's the starting quarterback, and he makes a legend of himself.
Well, and when he was a junior, he was behind two quarterbacks going into the third game of the year, and the first one got injured, and the second one wasn't making it happen. And Joe came in the third quarter and pulled us ahead, and we ran the table the rest of the year and won the national championship. So
that's fantastic. The legend of Joe. All right, Mike, let's go through your picks this week. Who do you like? What's the score? Give us the spread and total yards, please.
Well, I think we'll win, and I think we will win handily. I think we'll beat the spread for the third game in a row. We beat the spread against UNC and BYU, and I think we'll beat it against Stanford. And I think our offense will thrive against Stanford. I think we'll get my yardage is 526, and I think the majority of that will come on the ground. I think we'll get over 300 yards on the ground. I don't think Stanford's defense will stop our ground game. I think our line is gelling, and our running backs are doing well. In fact, I think if we would have won that game against the mighty Marshall Green Wave, they're not the Green Wave, sorry, Mean Green, whatever they are, we would be talking about getting in the playoffs right now. And obviously, we just came up short against that team. But if you look at the way we've played since then, I mean, California, we broke in a new quarterback, but if we would have had one of those turnovers that didn't get called back, we would have won by 2 touchdowns, 2 scores. And then we had a really good game against UNC, and we beat a good BYU team. I mean, we're a good football team, not to mention the fact that we hung with probably one of the best teams in the country in Ohio State. So it's, we got down too far, I think, on this team after that Marshall game. And that's not indicative of who this team is.
Are you a salesman? Because you just sold me on Notre Dame's resume.
I've told people my whole career I'm a salesman. I actually ran companies for most of my career, but yeah, I've been a salesman.
Mike, good stuff, bud. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and best of luck to you.
All right, thank you.
Representing the Soren Society, class of 05 from Columbia, Missouri. Let's welcome Clay Newell. Clay Newell, class of 05. What's up, Clay?
Hi, Vic. How are you today? Thanks for having me.
Was my pronunciation of the last name proper?
Nully, but close enough. It's pronounced
Nully.
A little different.
My bad, my man. All right, so 05. Help us out on that era. Quarterback, coach. Help me out here.
Quite the transition era, if you remember. So quarterback was Lavecchio to Carlisle Holiday to Brady Quinn, because the transition was Davey to Willingham to Weiss in a short order, as you remember.
Wow. You got a little bit of everything in your era at Notre Dame.
A lot of ups and downs, a lot of high ups and low downs. Let's put it that way.
How closely do you watch the games today? Do you get back for much, or are you all from afar?
I get back for about 1 game a year. Typically, I take care of the Mizzou for football. So I travel with Mizzou football. But we get on the bye week, I usually get back to a game. So I'm actually going to get back for the game this week because it's Mizzou's bye week. So I'll be there for my one game a year this week. I'm looking forward to it.
What do you do for Mizzou?
I'm an orthopedic surgeon.
Beautiful. Nicely done.
Yeah.
I've got some questions for you. I'll call you after the show. I've got some orthopedic issues with my stuff. Let's get your picks. Clay. Who do you like? What's the score? Give us a spread number, all that stuff.
Sure, I'll take Irish. I think we don't quite cover the spread this week. Get close at 31-17 is the score I'm going with, and I think we just don't quite cover the spread, but pretty close. And I think I'm going to go with about 468 yards of total offense, probably about half and half on the ground and half through the air, with Michael Mayer continuing to give us his All-American candidacy with multiple catches and probably a couple more touchdowns.
Baller. Hey, quick question before we say goodbye. Over your right shoulder, why do you have a portrait just of the 20-yard marker there? What does that signify?
That is usually where I stand on the sidelines at Mizzou football games, and my kids can always find me on TV standing next to the 20-yard marker, and so they took a portrait of the 20-yard marker because that's where they always see me when they see me on TV at the football games.
You've got nice kids. Clay, thanks for the pick, bud. Best of luck to you, okay?
Thanks, Vic. Have a great day.
Representing the Order of St. Thomas More from Louisville, Kentucky, Brian Butler joins us on Here Come the Irish. Brian, how you doing, buddy?
Good afternoon, Vic. How are you?
Very good. What's over your left shoulder there? What's that a photo of?
That's a Winston Churchill poster from World War II, or a print.
Okay. I'm too far away from this distance. It almost looked like the sorry, no disrespect, but it almost looked like the Wicked Witch of the East from Wizard of Oz. But upon closer view, that is, in fact, Winston Churchill. Hey, how often do you get back for games?
Usually try to get up twice a year. This year we're heading up for the Clemson game.
And do you believe in what some of our previous guests said, that this season could look much different if you take care of Marshall? I mean, and that there's a great case to be made there. If you beat Marshall the way you should, you're back in the top 25 and they're back in the picture again.
Absolutely. I mean, they played well at Ohio State. I actually went to the Ohio State game, and for 3 quarters we were winning that football game. It seemed like we got tired in the fourth quarter. The offense wasn't there. We beat Marshall. Our destiny's in our own hands. We beat Clemson. We beat SC. We're going to the playoffs.
I hope so. I mean, that SC game, I may go to that one. I can't wait. Let's get your picks here. First of all, who wins?
I think the Irish win easily. I think Stanford doesn't. They just do not have a good football team this year. I think Coach Freeman's got his sea legs now. I think Drew Pine is going to emerge as a really, really good Notre Dame quarterback. I think we win, and I think we cover.
Cover. They will win. You are one confident man, Brian. Thank you very much for the pick, man. Appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Take care, Vic.
From the Rockney Athletics Fund, our final contestant is Terry Madden out of Granger, Indiana, class of 78. Terry, we visited with Mike Mountford, class of 77, earlier in the program. Do you guys remember each other at all? Did you run into a Mike Mountford when you were in school?
Not that I can remember, but that was a couple of years ago. So I don't know if you remember that.
That's a good point, Terry. I don't remember you last week, let alone college. So
I'm with you there. I know we won the national championship in my senior year, so that was good.
Yes, you did. All right, so you live in Indiana. How often do you get back for games?
Well, since '88, I think I've missed 3 home games, and that was while living in Cincinnati for most of that time. So,
goodness.
We're pretty crazy when it comes to Notre Dame football. I'm afraid we warped our children from birth. So,
okay, you've been to a ton of games in the stadium.
Yeah.
What is your all-time favorite game you've ever watched at Notre Dame Stadium?
Oh, I hate that question because you go back and forth between Florida.
There's so many.
Yeah, Florida State '93, '88, Miami. Those are my top. So,
yeah, I would have to say Miami because they finished the job. They went on to win the national title that year. Florida State hurt because they won. They beat Charlie Ward. I was there, and then Then you lose to Boston College, and everything comes. And it was just like, oh my gosh. So,
right. And really, I should have said 77 USC when we came out in green, because I was there for, that was my senior year and we won. So that was a great one too. That was fun.
You have a rich history, rich knowledge of Notre Dame football, and you've been there for those games. All right. What do you like this week here, Terry?
Well, I'm really excited about our offense. The last couple of games, we were averaging about 500 yards. So with Stanford's defense, I don't know what the heck's going on with Stanford. They've really gone downhill. So I think we definitely are going to win. We're going to cover. My scores are 41-20, and I think we're going to get 522 yards. Sounds pretty bullish, but I'm excited to see where this team's going to go now. I think the lines are gelling. They're working together. A little nervous about our defensive backfield because it looks like Tariq Bracy's not going to play. But we'll see.
I trust your judgment. You've seen enough games where I can trust it. Terry, good luck to you, okay?
Thanks, Vic. And don't forget your Under Armour. It's going to be 38 Saturday night.
Oh, my goodness. All right, thank you very much. For those going, 38 degrees, according to weather person Terry Madden there. Quick weather report straight from Indiana. Here's what I think is going to happen, all right? First of all, Stanford has fallen off the map. Stanford's not the same team. Do I think the Irish will win? Yes, I do. Do I think they'll cover? No. Not because they're not going to dominate. I think they'll dominate the game. But you're going to get one of those backdoor late touchdowns, and it's going to mess with the spread, and everybody's going to sort of say, okay, no big deal. So they won't cover. They will win handily, and they'll produce 515 yards of offense. Those are Vic's picks. Best of luck. Hope one of you can win a Here Come the Irish hoodie right now. Let's toss to a video on the sights and sounds of that Notre Dame game in Vegas. What a sight to see. All right, Ryan, let's break down the Irish and the Cardinal. And I know this is supposed to be a long, historic rivalry, but a rivalry is a game in which both teams are winning equally, and it hasn't been the case between these teams most of the time. What is going on with Stanford, dude? Why did they fall off recently?
Well, there's been a lot of competition at Stanford for those same guys. I mean, think about it. UCLA going into last weekend was number 12 in the country. Haven't seen what they were ranked this week. USC, of course, has Lincoln Riley. So a lot of those guys that maybe would shy away from a UCLA or a USC are now saying, no, I'm going to go there, coach. So that's part of it. But they do have Coach Shaw there. He's a quality coach. So he's going to have those guys right. And they're going to want to build off of the defensive performance, at least they were able to put together last week. So it's just a lot of competition there in the Pac-12. And then, of course, name, image, and likeness. That's a big factor for all coaches in college football.
Keys to victory for the Irish this week, what are they?
Number one, run the football. I think we learned last week that Drew Pine, when he has a run game, can really do anything in the passing game. So establish that early and often. It's going to be important, though, for the Notre Dame defense to make tackles. They gave up a little bit of rush yardage last week, especially in that second half. They have to be stout defensively at the linebacker and defensive line position. And I don't know about you, Vic, I want more sacks from Notre Dame's defensive line. So first, run the ball. That opens up everything. Stop the run and get some sacks. That way the Irish win.
Hey, Drew Pine, you could see the confidence starting to bubble, right? Every game, he's getting more confident. Every game, he understands it. Helped to have a great running game, becoming more of a threat every Saturday.
Well, that's first and foremost a nod to offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, right? I mean, developing Drew Pine in 3 weeks. He's 3-0 as a starter, really gotten better every week. But, Vic, I say it all the time. people get fooled about the quarterback position. It's not about how big of an arm you have or how many throws you can make. It's how fast can you make quick decisions. And what I loved watching the game, calling it on the Notre Dame radio network, Drew Pine was seeing it and doing it. And that kind of trust only comes from preparation. Even Ian Book after the game saying, no surprise, the way that he studies. So it's just fantastic when a player has the preparation pay off the way Drew Pine has these last 3 games.
Good to hear. Well, I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon, Ryan, shuffling through all of my dad's filing cabinets and drawers here in his office. So you can tend to whatever you need to do. Until then, man, we'll see you next week on the show. All right, brother?
Go Irish.
All right, that's Ryan Harris. I'm Vic Lombardi. We leave you with the Notre Dame Marching Band in Vegas.